Okay, now what we want to do is kind of have a discussion about what all of this means. So we're talking about photosynthesis. I want you to think about, first of all, coming up with a synopsis of photosynthesis. So can you give a synopsis of how photosynthesis works in a few sentences? So if I was going to give a synopsis about photosynthesis, I would say that photosynthesis takes light energy, converts that light energy into the form of chemical energy in the form of ATP and NADPH, utilizes the ATP and NADPH to take CO2 out of the air and synthesize glucose. So when we're talking about photosynthesis, then there are two primary reactions: light-dependent reaction and light-independent reactions. So here then, we're looking at CO2. So when we measured this, are these lines basically looking at light-dependent reactions or light-independent reactions? All right, it's a tough question. So let's look at our light-dependent reactions. So we started off over here, we turned on the light, right? When we turned on that light, then what happened was that the plant absorbed the light with the chlorophyll. The chlorophyll then, basically water was split. The hydrogen ion stayed inside the thylakoid space while the electron moved up, down the electron transport chain, moving more hydrogen ions in the electron or in the thylakoid space. And then we ended up with a lot of hydrogen ions in the thylakoid space, where we have an electrochemical gradient. ATP synthase harnessed that potential energy then and utilized that energy for the production of ATP from ADP. And our electron that was moving through the electron transport chain was accepted by NADPH. Then our ATP and NADPH moved to the stroma, where they basically were utilized as energy for the light-independent reactions, which is the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle then cranks, grabs CO2 out of the air, continues to crank, and makes glucose. So with that in mind, we had our light reactions at the beginning where we take light and make ATP and NADPH, or we have the Calvin cycle that takes CO2 out of the air and makes glucose. These then, when we see this slope, is that due to light-dependent reactions or light-independent reactions. Okay, and if we're looking at light-independent reactions, that's the Calvin cycle. So this specifically is looking at the light-independent reactions, or basically the effects of light on the Calvin cycle. So here our Calvin cycle was faster when we had more light. Our Calvin cycle was a little bit slower when we had a little bit less light. Here though, it actually goes up. So if our Calvin cycle was cranking, it would go down. So was our Calvin cycle actually working here when it was going up? So the answer to that is that the Calvin cycle was working here. However, in the background, when we turned off our total lights, it went way up. Okay, the reason it goes way up is that because this is aerobic cellular respiration. So the reason that this went up is simply because the Calvin cycle was working slower, at a slower rate, taking up CO2, than respiration was in the background producing CO2. Okay, so that should provide you with the information you need to figure out the final calculation. So think about this here, right? We have photosynthesis occurring. Right here it's going up because we have respiration faster than photosynthesis. Here we have respiration in the background. That means that respiration here is occurring faster than photosynthesis, which means that respiration is occurring all the time. So that this is actually photosynthesis plus respiration, photosynthesis plus respiration, photosynthesis plus respiration, respiration alone. So to calculate out photosynthesis then, we can say photosynthesis is P, respiration is R, this is P plus R, this is R, so the slope of P plus R minus R equals P. And we can calculate a rate of photosynthesis for this light, We have a faster rate of photosynthesis for this light, which will be more negative because the faster the rate, the more negative it will be. And even a faster rate of photosynthesis for this light, which will even be more negative.